Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 76. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed to the show, who continues to support us, like, share, comment, and rate and review. That support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guests today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment provides first-class weight rooms and has earned an exceptional reputation of providing the finest quality, design, and customer service. Being a direct manufacturer, the team at Samson brings full customization capabilities and not only branding, but in custom equipment needed to execute your next project. From racks, plates, barbells, benches, dumbbells, flooring, and storage, and much more, Samson equipment is durable and made to order from premium grade materials, all built from scratch, start to finish. Samson equipment provides professional weight room solutions for all your strength and conditioning needs. See the Samson standard for yourself and learn more at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to use promo code strength_game at checkout to receive 10% off your next order at cerberusstrength.com. And in this week's episode, I'm joined by Justin Roethlingshoefer. Justin is the founder and president of Own It System, in addition to being the co-founder of Own It Coaching and the creator of the Own It app. Justin has over 20 years of experience working with the best athletes in the world. Over that time, he's worked in the NCAA, NHL, with Olympic national teams, and over 25 of the top brand name companies. Justin has spoken at a dozen events, including TEDx stage. He's the host of the Sports Science and Recovery podcast and the Own It Show. Additionally, he's an author of 3 Amazon bestseller books, including Intent, A Practical Approach to Applied Sports Science for Athletic Development, The Athletic Performance Blueprint, and Own It. He's also the founder of the Hockey Summit in 2015, which is an all-inclusive training camp for professional hockey players. Justin himself is an accomplished and current athlete. A former college hockey player, he continues to train and walk the walk. He is actively training and competing in both DEKA and HYROX fitness competitions. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Justin Roethlingshoefer. What's going on today, everybody? I'm excited. We have big name on here. We've got Justin Roethlingshoefer. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I've discussed things back and forth, not only with you, but with some of your other staff members over at Own It. So I'm excited that this kind of blossomed into a more of a conversation, and you could have you on the show and really dive into not only Own It and like the company, but also like how you kind of got involved with it. So really want to start today with how you got involved into athletics. I know you played a lot of hockey, obviously, from up north, but really what got you involved in sports, strength sports, and then ultimately kind of pursuing the path that you're on now with Own It and with some of the other endeavors that you've been a part of?
Yeah, so I think everything goes back to really, to be honest with you, when I was 12 years old, and I started to, I played hockey growing up, being an NHL player, being in the league. That was like my goal. That was the whole purpose that I thought that I was meant to fulfill in this world, was to play in the National Hockey League and really be a pro. That's what I thought my purpose and goal was. I wasn't the most talented, I wasn't the most skilled, but I was just a hardworking kid, and I had a massive passion for the game. And at 12, I was playing with 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and it was really the first time that I was playing above my age group. and wasn't standing out as much as I usually was. And my dad said to me, he said, son, talent will get you noticed, but consistency will get you paid. And that was really the first thing that clicked in my head of like, whoa, how do I become the most consistent version of myself? Consistency, we know, is key. And that's in every facet of life. But from then on, I became obsessed with the process. I became obsessed with understanding, how do I become the most consistent version of myself? And that's what had me dive like heels deep into sleep, nutrition, exercise, hydration, weight training, all the medical journals you could imagine, the wearable devices. I slept with heart rate monitors and pulse oximeters and brainwave monitors and tracked my sleep day in and day out, had little subjective questionnaires for myself. And this is in 1999, when a simple heart rate monitor was $1,000. And it's like these types of things, and they were bricks, right? Just this big, massive hand on your chest. And so all of these things were something that really kind of propelled me through, and not only my love for the game of hockey, but the game of consistency, if you call it, the game of figuring out what that means, figuring out you, which ultimately led to my other passion, or the passion and the purpose of which I was put on this earth to do, which was impact others, and impact others in a positive way, to bring out their God-given gifts, bring out their God-given talents in a multitude of ways. And that's ultimately what Own It has become, the coaching company, in being able to help others optimize their human vessels, their worldly vessels, which is their bodies, to ultimately bring out their God-given gifts that they've been given, be it in entrepreneurship world, be it in athletics world, or wherever it is that you play, wherever your purpose exists, helping you figure that out in a very scientific, in a very purpose-driven way.
Oh, that's awesome. That is something to be said too, that Own It also works with people in every kind of space. I know this podcast and pretty much most of our audience are coaches and athletes, so a lot of it is centered around that. But like, it's also good to know that like you're working with CEOs of like Fortune 500 companies, like you're working with entrepreneurs, you're working with every type of people, because this is not an exclusive item just for athletes. Like the benefits of understanding your recovery, HRV score, all these different wellness aspects actually benefit anybody, any human. So I know for our audience, we're going to really kind of hone in on the coach and athlete side. But that's something great to know. When you kind of like went about this endeavor, like getting involved in athletics and then kind of noticing the shift, like from talent level and skill, was there like a spark more so like to give back and like start to get involved in coaching? Or did you kind of just realize like, hey, the consistency piece and my work ethic are what's really going to like hold me over? So the way I can kind of stay involved in athletics is start to do that, and I can really hone in on the coaching side. Like what really kind of dove you into that? And then was Own It kind of evolving as you were coaching, or did that kind of come later on?
Yeah, all great questions. So when I was playing, you think about this, right? You're a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kid that's extremely disciplined, to a point of obsession, to be honest with you, and unhealthy in certain extents. But a type of discipline that just is different. And when that different exists, living differently, being differently, recovering differently, playing differently, all of these things stemmed from this different lifestyle, this different mindset, this different sense of discipline that existed from a consistency standpoint. And so for me, it really became this natural leader role that just people tended to say, man, like this guy's different. One, it's at first it always scared them, and I was always made fun of, was always left out, was always the guy that was like the butt of all the jokes. But very quickly people start to go like, hey, maybe there's something to this, because all the jokes, all the making fun of, all the BSing back and forth in locker rooms, like it didn't change me. I just continued to show up as myself. And very quickly you found, like I said, you found that leadership role where one guy would come over and say, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, can I have 10% of what you're doing? Can I just touch it a little bit? Can I just lean in a little bit? Can I just put my right foot in? And so we'd start talking about preparation. We'd start talking about sleep. We'd start talking about nutrition. We'd start talking about training. We'd start talking about all these things that you had control over. And very quickly manifested into this massive love for it. Not only did my educational career start, I came to the United States, played in college while doing school, and then it only continued to manifest deeper and deeper and deeper. Ultimately into the point where I started to work for the Columbus Blue Jackets and their American League team, kind of being a liaison to some of this technology stuff. Because again, remember in 2007, 2008, 2009, technology in sport was not something that anybody thought about. Like, it was still very foreign. It was very new. It was very early in that process. And this was something that I've been using for 7, 8, 9 years at this point, and had become very comfortable with it. Like, I knew how to apply it in a very practical way. And so really started to take leadership roles in development camps, in main camps, in testing, and just helping understand what was going on. And then from there, got out of playing, finished playing, and immediately I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I went and got my master's degree at the University of Louisville, working with Tina Murray, and she's obviously now the VP of Health and Wellness with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And it's been, it was really ever since that moment of being able to work and see the opportunity that existed in that space that like I just understand things differently. And it goes back to like Kobe Bryant's words of like reps is cool. Like, you can go to school for all this stuff, you can go and get exposed to all this stuff, but I've been taking reps since 1999. Like, I've just been repping it out and looking at it and pushing data and crunching data and understanding it and having data applied to things that were happening in practicality, that I just understand it. Like, it just makes sense. And so all of a sudden, my God-given purpose has switched lanes on me. It's no longer about me and being this guy that's playing sport at this level, but now being able to empower others, being able to help people take control of their life again. And when I was 26 years old, I started to develop real terrible gut issues, like stomach issues you couldn't imagine, and went to every doc, and everything was the same. Hey, you're really healthy. You're super healthy. Everything's great. And I was just like, I don't feel great. let me tell you that. And so again, it led me to start guessing and testing, start doing all these at-home tests. And at this point, the at-home tests weren't really as developed as they were now. This is 10 years ago. And so all of a sudden I'm doing stool sample tests. I'm doing blood testing. I'm doing saliva testing, really just trying to put 2 and 2 together. And it wasn't until I went to New York City and saw this gut specialist, and I started telling him what I was finding. And I was like, there's something going on internally that is not right. I've got these massive micronutrient dysfunctions that are not working for me. I've got high intestinal permeability. Like, what is going on? And at this point, like the gut brain axis, the gut biome, nothing, like, you didn't talk about these things. It was all like a farce, right? It was all like quack doctors that were doing this. And ultimately, he went in and we did a colonoscopy. I was 27 years old and found 8 precancerous polyps. And he goes, this is incredible. Like, I've never seen anything like this in somebody your age. And he goes, to be honest, if we wouldn't have done this, he goes, you would have been dead by 30, because it would have been too hard to treat at that point. And so it again started to fulfill this purpose in me to continue to change the game and to make this accessible to people, to provide a system that really looked at everything in a different way, no longer just react to what's there, but be preventative, truly preventative. And when I left the NHL in 2019, 2020, that was kind of the start of like what my vision was for Own It, was to be able to create this holistic system that incorporated technology, testing, but most importantly, coaching, human element that guided people around these things. And for this audience, the athletes that we work with. And what that looks like is being able to do your gut biome testing, do your cellular micronutrient testing, do your cellular glucose insulin interaction, do your hormone paneling, and be able to see what toll your body is going through and how it's handling stress. And it led to my postgraduate work in heart rate variability, sleep and recovery science, and really wanting to know how the body operates. And once we know how the body operates, it's just like it says up there, we can help you own your different. Like, everybody's different. And the moment that we can do that, we can start operating in a better way. We can understand what supplements we need to take and which ones we don't. We can understand how we need to eat and what foods we need to focus in on. We do everything from private chefing services to meal prep services. We prepare customized supplementation. We've got docs on staff that work with all of our guys to help guide these things through different recovery modalities. Like, it is a very in-depth and personalized experience that only comes from my own experience, having gone through these roads of uncertainty and wishing that somebody would listen, or so that somebody would be able to take that extra step and go outside of the typical lane that everybody stays in and be much more proactive and preventative rather than reactionary based off of something that already exists.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot to kind of take in. And it's definitely an awesome story. Like, obviously, like there's some elements to it that have put you in like a really precarious position, but it's like a testament to your curiosity and like what you were doing. Like you said, those reps that you get, that's why there's companies that can't catch up to this. And I mean, I guess one of the sincerest forms of flattery is like copying some of these models, but you have put so much work on the front end, like by staying kind of taking a step outside of what the normal framework is, that box, to keep not only just like what you were doing in the beginning was guessing and then just kind of testing things on your own, to getting to the point where you're now actually like holistically measuring and you're managing all these things, and it's all encompassing and it's super in depth, and you're working with so many different types of people, because this is something that should be accessible to everybody, whether you're an athlete or not. And it's all very important things. And unfortunately, yeah, most people, kind of doctors or any kind of health professionals, try to hit the bell curve. And if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, most people are going to just think that's what it is. But everybody is kind of their own individual, and being able to kind of, like the company says, like own it, and actually like own your own individual thing and have the tools at your disposal, and then have the guidance and everything. I think that's huge. What kind of, like, touching on the subject, like what really does kind of set Own It apart from some of the companies? I know you touched on it a bit with like the coaching and the human feedback and element that's actually involved in the process. But I know there's habit tracking. There's some of the educational pieces and information that kind of comes from the feedback that you're getting within those. There's schedule reminders and stuff like that. But what do you guys really kind of hang your hat on as the most important thing, for athletes that maybe are interested in, or coaches that are really trying to kind of push this to admin or push this to sport coaches, that this is something that we would take us into the future?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple ways that'll answer this. Number one is, what makes Own It different is its deep concierge, bespoke approach. And there's a lot of buzzwords in there. I understand that. But when we talk about it, it's when I talk about concierge, it's being able to pick and choose what it is that you need and being able to figure out what fits the budget. I wrote a book in 2018 with Devin McConnell called Intent. And it was being able to set up a high performance model on a budget of $1 or a budget of $1 million. And we just came out with version 2 about a month and a half ago, basically updating a lot of the things that were in there. But the reason that Intent existed was because there was so much technology being pushed to like our purview, and everything was about tools and tactics rather than purpose and intention. And when we're just trying to keep up with the Johnsons or keep up with the next institution, there's no purpose or reason as to why we're doing things. If we don't have a vision, if we don't have a purpose and an idea of what we're doing and why we're doing it, it's just collecting for the sake of collecting, and it becomes a big arms race. And at the end of the day, I'm not interested in any type of arms race. All I want to do is make sure that we are showing up the best that we can for our athletes at the end of the day, and making sure that we are creating this system that allows them to be healthy, not even just for the 4 years in college, not just for their extension of their pro careers, but educating them and empowering them to be able to take these habits, be able to take these day-to-days, be able to take these things that they do consistently, going back to that 12-year-old kid, that now will impact them for the rest of their lives. And that's, I think, the big thing when we talk about concierge. And so the concierge version is, hey, do you want the app and the wearable devices that helps create the guidance as to actionables and like what you need to do? That's how we reach a lot of junior teams. That's how we reach a lot of youth programs. That's how we reach a lot of AAU programs, to be able to set these things at a very young age. That's how we reach a lot of colleges. From there, it's like, hey, do we want to start digging into some testing modalities? Do we want to start getting into some different very bespoke models of being able to look at nutritional supplementation or meal planning, or being able to then take a look at recovery centers and what makes sense for each athlete and across the board, and creating recovery routines. We want to tap into sleep. All of these things are under one roof within Own It, because we know you can't silo these things. We know we can't just say, hey, sleep is your issue, we're going to focus right there and not look at anything else that's happening, because that we just know that we're looking at 25% of actually what's going on. And so when you look at it holistically and you create a holistically integrated model that treats the athlete like a human being, and you treat health before performance, performance increases as a consequence. And so I love, like, one of the things that I lead a lot of different keynotes with is, when health is optimized, ultimately performance is realized, not the other way around. And that's what we've been stuck with for so long, is we've been stuck in this space, in this mindset of, we've put performance on this pedestal and we're chasing it, we're chasing it, we're chasing it, we're chasing it. And we forget what the process is to get there. And the process starts with health. And health optimization, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, our body doesn't know the difference of the strains in which we're being exposed to. And so we have to understand what modalities work for each person. And there's not one combination that fits for everybody. All of a sudden I could say, Nick, for you, we have to go and lean in on sleep and your micronutrient deficiencies, which are through the roof. Amazing. We fixed those two things. We've now optimized a lot of the way that your body's functioning. And all of a sudden you're performing lights out. You feel better. You're more focused. Your mind doesn't wander as much. You are able to put muscle on easier. You are recovering faster. You're getting into deeper stages of sleep. You feel better. Whereas for me, it might be that I'm actually not absorbing my water really well into my cells, and I'm chronically dehydrated. And because I'm chronically dehydrated, we have to figure out why. And we have to go back through this. Okay, what's going on with Justin from an electrolyte standpoint, so that we can now optimize him? Or maybe it's that I'm completely stressed out and I've got things going on with my family, and I'm showing up in a chronically sympathetic state, chronically stressed, and it has nothing to do about anything physically that I've done from practice or the weight room or games or any of these types of things. And thus we have to teach more on self-care and a lot of mindset work. And that's going to be what my difference is. That's going to be what my ownership mentality needs to be in order to lean in and perform at a higher level. But it all stems from health. And the moment that we can lean into what those are and get really specific for each athlete and understand which habits ultimately determine a greater health outcome, that's when everybody wins. And ultimately health becomes scalable in the team setting for the first time. The other thing that it becomes is that it's no longer just data hiding behind or information hiding behind an ironclad wall, that the coaches are the only ones that have access to it. Forever, that's where it's been. And I think that's it, and this is just actually coming to me now, is in my journey, that was one of the unique things, is that I was the only one to ever see my data. My coaches never even saw it because I was the only one managing it at that young age, is because we didn't have team data sets. We didn't have power track. I was doing all this myself. And so because I had it, I was able to take action on these habits and they meant something to me. I became empowered. I was able to choose my journey. And because I was able to choose my journey, I became educated on it. I became understanding of when I did A, B was ultimately the result was B. And I go, oh, you know what? I probably shouldn't go out and drink this much tonight because I've got X, Y, and Z coming up. Or if I do choose to go out tonight, what should I do so that I feel better tomorrow? And when I do this, what ultimately happens to my data and what's being reflected? And so those are the things that we do through Own It, as well as it's not just another data set sitting behind this wall, but rather everything is athlete facing. Everything is athlete empowering. It's athlete educating, because competence creates confidence. And we know that confidence is ultimately what drives continuous consistency. And so when we can create competence, create confidence, confidence creates consistency that yields the performance outcomes that we're looking for.
No, that's great. That's I love like what you guys talk about and like what the whole Own It system like actually is, purpose and its attention behind it. Because I think, like, to your point where you're saying like before it was coaches kind of were the end all be all, that's where the answers were coming from. And I know that like in this day and age I see it a lot more too. Athletes are coming up to me like I think within this week, it's Tuesday only, I've already had 2 athletes like send me something from social media or an article or ask something specific. Like, this information is readily available. They just nowadays, like compared to what it was before, but nowadays they don't necessarily have the filter to make sure that the information is applicable for them and it's actually like a good source of research, like it's a good resource. And that's why like I see Own It as awesome, because like it is qualified people providing those resources, and then you can tailor it to exactly what the individual needs to work on, what actually is a beneficial thing for them. And that's cool, because that's almost essentially what you were doing when you were first starting out and like you were playing hockey, and like first the kids were making fun of you because like you're dialing everything in, but then they realize that like their skill and talent alone is not going to get them. And even though maybe you're not the most talented of everybody, you're consistently getting better. Your work ethic is good, and you're taking all these different components of health and wellness that drive kind of performance. And now they're asking you those questions. And I guarantee those kids were probably asking questions unique and specific to them, like where they kind of see their faults. Like, I'm sweating up a storm. Like, I feel like I'm dehydrated all the time, or I have headaches. Like, they're not asking questions that are pertinent to someone else. And that's the cool thing about Own It too, is because you can ask those questions specifically to like your own health and performance. And like in my aspect, like I think of athletics as, which kind of is hard for me to comprehend, like high level, like strongman, high level, like professional athletes. A lot of times that doesn't seem healthy to me, or how maybe their training doesn't seem healthy. But I think the ones that have been able to have consistently long careers, like Brian Shaw is still competing and he's in his like early 40s. Like, you've got some guys in the NHL that are going on almost 2 decades. Like, I can't even remember how many years like Chris Chelios played, but those guys were really good at understanding all these different components without having it. And now it's cool to have a resource that can kind of give you that information so that you can measure it and manage it yourself and make what you're doing, like that performance, healthy. And in turn, it feeds back into the system and makes your performance better.
You bring up a good point there, and I think an athlete that everybody can relate to, love him or hate him, is Tom Brady. And the way that we kind of often talk about this is forever the type of training, the type of education, the type of treatment, the type of testing, the type of assessments that Brady was going through, the type of modalities that he was exposed to, were kept for the Bradys and the Bezoses of the world. Like, if you're Tom Brady, you're going to get this. If you're Jeff Bezos, you're going to pay for this. And that's where it was. That was it. That was literally who had access to this. And what our mission has become is to take what is available to them and make it available to everybody. And for the first time, you're able to see your data, feel your data, know your data, understand it, and then take action in a purposeful way. It's one thing, like, I mean, even the wearable devices out there right now, like it's amazing to be able to look at, hey, my HRV is this, my sleep quality is this, my respiration rate's this, my body temperature is this. Like, okay, cool. What do you do with it? What action steps do you take? Your HRV is this. What do you do? Nobody knows. And the reason nobody knows is because it's just data. It's just information. It's like the story that you just told about the athlete, like sending an article over. Cool. There's bazillion articles. There's a bazillion YouTube videos. There's a bazillion books. There's a bazillion presentations out there about, hey, health optimization and play 5 years longer, or be able to focus X amount longer. Like, these are all cool. But what do you do with it? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for Justin? What does it mean for Nick? And what does it mean for us specifically, from an action step to take the moment we close the book, the moment that presentation ends, the moment we get off the webinar, the moment the YouTube video comes to a close? What does that mean for us? And oftentimes nobody knows. It's like, okay, cool. We've just gone through, we've absorbed this, but I don't know how to apply it. It's the so what now problem. And that's what we have really been focused on solving, is that, so what now do I do? Here it is. Hey, good morning, Nick. Based off of everything that we've seen, these are your action steps today. And your action steps don't change every single day, because what do we have to go back to? Consistency. But we've figured out what you need to do, and you be really consistent with these three things over the next month, over the next 5 weeks. There's now going to be a new low-hanging fruit, or the lowest common denominator that's causing another change. And now we change, and now we create an adjustment to make sure that this becomes something we focus on. And so there's now maybe 1 or 2 new additions of an action step that we're going to lean into, and now you become consistent with those. And so as you do this over the course of, and we talk about consistency over time and having patience, you do this over 6, 7, 8, 9 months. You look back at that person that existed 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago, and you're like, I don't recognize the life that guy was living. Don't recognize the life that young woman was living, because it no longer resonates. You're living completely different. You feel completely different, but you're educated and you know why. It's not like, oh, I just stopped eating meat because I think meat makes me not feel well. Well, that's going to take you further away, most likely, from where you need to go, because you have no idea. It's throwing darts in the dark. I'm going to start this morning routine that's 5 hours long because that's what somebody told me to do and they're successful. Well, how sustainable is that? How long are you actually going to stick with that every single day? What if we just chose one thing that meant something, like really, really personal to you, Nick, that was really aligned with what your body needed, really aligned with what your mind needed, really aligned with what you personally needed. And we got really specific with it and really actionable, and then really consistent. 4 or 5 weeks later, hey, I'm ready. Bring on something else because I feel really good. And now the morning routine that Nick has created for himself, or the recovery protocol that Nick has created for himself over 3, 4, 5 months, is so personal to him that consistency is not even an option anymore. It's just who you are. It's become instinct. And what we say is it goes from planning to creating a new routine, to creating a rhythm in that routine, to creating a new instinct. Routine is not the end. Routine is not where we want to be. Routine is hard. And we know that. We know that because how many people start like these new things and then fall off 3 weeks later? It's because there was nothing personalized to it. There was nothing that meant something to you. It wasn't tied to your purpose. It wasn't tied to anything that you wanted. But the moment that you're like, oh, this means something for me, and I know why I'm doing this, the consistency comes because competency is there. Competency creates confidence. Confidence creates consistency. And that continual routine takes you from a plan to that new routine in rhythm, to a new instinct, to something that just exists, to something that's just a part of your being, to something that you just roll through every single day, and you know how it is, and you know how you have to go after it, and you know how you have to feel that. For me, I was never a guy that would sit and meditate and get in front of red lights and do these types of things until I realized that my mindset and my inability to stay quiet and my inability to be quiet and be alone with my thoughts was actually holding me back from being consistent. And that's a new recent revelation for me in probably the last 2 to 3 years, where when I started to get into business, I was just this go, go, go guy, right? Same thing that I did when I was playing, when I was coaching. It was just like, the more I can do, the better. Just keep pushing. And I wondered why I would always burn out. Wondered why I would always like get really sick 2 or 3 times a year, wondering why I would always get really frustrated and have like a meltdown a couple times a year. All of these things, like, why would these happen? Well, that's why, because you would just go, 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 go. And when I got into business and was running a business, you can't do that really well and expect to continually function. And so it wasn't until I was able to add these routines into my life. And I wasn't a great meditator, but I loved to sit in front of my red light for 15, 20 minutes, or I loved to sit in my sauna for 20, 30 minutes every morning. Well, what if I meditated in there? And that's a practice that now is a staple of mine. I will never miss a morning of meditation in front of my red light or the sauna, one or the other, either or. But that's a must for me because it creates clarity and space in my mind for me to be consistent and be able to ultimately, what do I get at the end of the day because I'm consistent? Performance. And so I'm not striving for performance. I'm striving for consistency, and performance happens as a consequence because I'm able to take ownership over the habits that I've made super personalized to myself. And I know what they mean. So I'm competent to that, which leads confidence, which ultimately creates consistency to create that performance.
No, I love it. I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people put the cart before the horse, and like you said, they put performance on a pedestal, and you really kind of miss the big picture of what all the pieces are that actually encompass and like push performance forward. And consistency and then sustainability, those are huge factors that go into it. And then having that personal element that really kind of drives the message home is huge. But like you said, like the routine, like that's what people say when they get stuck in a rut. Like it's forced, and it's like, that's why like I always hated the word the grind. Like when people would say that, because like that's not a good thing. Like gears grinding means that it's not efficient and it's not sustainable. Something's going to break down at a point. And maybe you can do that for a little bit, but again, if you want to be consistent, if you want this to be a long-term like health benefit and for it to drive performance going forward, there's got to be a way to kind of make it better. And from everything like you talk about, it turns into like something actionable that you can really own, and then it becomes almost habit forming. It's a part of you.
I want to touch on that for a second to make sure that people heard what you said, because that was really really profound. Is the grind. So often we think that we have to, if we're not grinding, we're not doing it right. If we're not grinding, we're not working hard. If we're not grinding, we're soft. If we're not grinding, we are going to fall short and we're not going to hit our true potential that exists. And quite frankly, it's the furthest thing from the truth, because think about two things grinding together. If I hear grinding in my car, I'm not going to continue to keep going. If I hear grinding when I'm putting like anything together and I'm assembling something, I'm not going to keep going. A lesson my father taught me is, if it doesn't seem to be going in pretty easily, like talking about like building a chair or connecting two things together, don't force it, because if you force it, it's going to break. And that's the same thing with us. When we are living on purpose, when we are living in accordance to what is right in us, when we're living attached to our spiritual connection and doing what is right for us to ultimately live out that God-given purpose, it just happens and it feels effortless. Doesn't mean it takes less effort, but it's effortless. The same amount of work takes you further. The same amount of work takes you the distance. The same amount of work can become consistency. So it's not less effort, it's effortless. And that's what it requires, is being so dialed into what that purpose is. Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it so that you can check the list in the morning and say, yeah, I did it. Now what? Or is it, no, these are the things that mean something to me so that I can ultimately show up in the best version of myself so that I can execute on what my true purpose is? And when we know what those things are and when we're educated on those things, it hits a little bit differently. It allows us to be consistent. It allows us to lean into those things that we truly want to do and that means something to us. Because each and every one of us have a talent, a gift that we are meant to be world-class at. Absolutely world-class. And not one of ours is the same. And the quest is to figure out what that is. And it's okay if it's not simple. It's okay if it's difficult. It's okay if it doesn't seem easy, because it's not easy, but it's simple. It's like climbing a mountain. It's simple, but it's not easy. And so we have to come back to, again, it's not the grind that we want to be on. It's a different mentality. And it's not soft to focus on health. You can have both. You can be healthy, you can be optimized, and work really freaking hard at the same time and have massive amount of success. I've been that guy. I've been at the top of the pillar. And quite frankly, I call my time in the National Hockey League as my ultimate failure. Massive success, zero fulfillment. Success without fulfillment, the ultimate failure. Because I wasn't living or leaving up to what my purpose was, what my calling was, what I was supposed to be doing. But rather ego was stepping in the way. And so I had to figure out the steps, the action steps that I needed to do to bring myself back around. And when we get really specific with that, when we're able to optimize that, when we're able to now optimize ourselves in this space of purpose, man, that is a fun place to be. And you talk about educating athletes on this. You talk about educating athletes on how to optimize themselves. Yes, not everyone's going to be a professional athlete. Not everybody's meant to be a professional athlete. But at every single level of where you're at, you're meant to be where you are. And so let's educate you and empower you with as much information as we can, where your feet are, where you're currently playing, where you're currently experiencing sport, where you're currently involved in sport. And if we can educate you on this now, imagine how that's going to impact where you're going next.
No, that's a great point. I think that's a reason, like what you touched on, we've talked about it before, like all the reps that you had early on in your career and like your intrigue and curiosity when you first started with everything, like that's kind of set you up to this point. And having all these tools accessible at a younger age just sets you up for the pinnacle, like later on, and sustainability. And that's, I mean, talking about athlete burnout and having, like, I see college kids all the time come in and some of them are just, they're kind of done. And like there's no opportunity for a pro level. There's no opportunity for a career after this because they've already kind of wasted their mental physical abilities because they didn't capitalize on the beginning. But no, it's I think mindset is huge, and how you kind of spin it and how you really kind of work towards this, and it's becomes a want to, and like it's something that drives your passion versus a have to when you're kind of just checking a box. And understanding your purpose behind everything is huge. I want to kind of take it back a little bit, like from how this, like the inception of Own It, and like how you kind of were, unbeknownst to yourself, probably kind of creating it as you were starting as an athlete. So like nowadays, like with your own type of training, like trying to stay healthy and be involved in strength sports or athletics or just physical activity and everything like that, does that still kind of influence some of the decision? Does that kind of still spark maybe some of the projects or the focus of Own It? Or like within the company, are you guys bouncing ideas off of each other as you try to optimize your own health in a different way now?
Yeah, 100%. It's a daily conversation with us, and quite frankly, it's a big part of the vision. It's a big part of why we will stay ahead, is because we are not resting where we are. I mean, just in the last month, we started to, like, so one of the big things that I was doing was, I don't know if you've heard of DEKA, or if you've heard of HYROX, the HYROX games, or any of those things, but that's what I compete in now. It's basically the CrossFit games without the Olympic lifting. They call them hybrid athletes, so highly anaerobic, but having to repeat these anaerobic bouts over 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, depending on the amount of activities and stuff like that. And so I've fallen in love with it because it's the first thing that I get to compete at, but also get to really push myself athletically. And it's the only thing that mimics that feeling of just like pure exhaustion that you had when you were training, kind of just being an athlete. And so in doing that, I'm like, I want to continue to not only feel well and healthy day to day, but I want to be able to perform well. So I get my blood done every quarter, looking at cellular micronutrient deficiencies. I do my gut biome panel twice a year, taking a look at what's going on. But what we've started to do now is actually, like I said, personalized supplementation. From there, being able to, we do customized meal preparation. So ordering my meals based upon all this stuff. For some of our clients, we're doing in-home private chefing to go in and actually have people cook for them at that professional level to be able to optimize that. And then again, for people that don't, like creating this ingredients list of things that you have to have into your day so that you can be there. And then, so all of these offering sets and all of these things that we're starting to include in different partnerships we're creating, different integrations that we're creating, all of these things come off of experience. Like, what do we need in order to be the most optimized versions of ourselves? Because again, we have one earthly vessel. That's it. We have one body, one mind. And it's not body and mind, it's body mind. They're one. You can't separate the mind and body. They're uniquely created together. And so when we have one earthly vessel, it's our job to make sure that that is optimized and that it's working at the highest level possible so that we can execute on our God-given gift.
That's awesome. That's what I love to hear. That's what everybody on the show is, basically their own subject. And it's cool to see like a high level company and people that you surround yourself with that are driving Own It and the product and the business forward are people that still like live and breathe the passion of it. And it's all coming from experience. And obviously it's backed by science. There's a lot of things that you guys add in to the program that it's tried and true methods that work. And it's all like based off scientific principles and tested things that actually are proven. But it's cool to see it tiered for different professionals. It's tiered to different levels. It's personalized, but at the end of the day, like it's tried and tested by all of you guys. And to see yourself like find a new avenue to continue to pursue and be athletic and push yourself to boundaries it definitely pays its dividends and its weight in gold when you can push that back into the product and test things out before you kind of launch it and everything too. So no, that's awesome. I know you got to run pretty soon, so I wanna end it with this. Like, we finish every good show, like any good training session, with a finisher.
Love it.
So we can go rapid fire with this, but I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and overtime at the very end. But you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, first one I have for you. Biggest influence in the sports performance field and favorite athlete growing up.
In the sport performance field, Tina Murray, for sure. And then favorite athlete growing up was Curtis Joseph.
Okay. What can you be found doing? I know you talked a little bit about your new sporting venture, but when you're not coaching, you're not training, and outside of kind of the performance field, what are some of your hobbies that are not athletically kind of driven?
So I love spending time with, to be honest, I just love spending time with my wife and dog. We're right by the water. So down here in Miami. So we're always on the water in some way, shape, or form, either boating or out on the paddle boards or kayaking or just sitting in the water. Like, it's just, I find there's 2 places that I find I'm closest to God. One is on the water and the other is in the mountains. So that's where you're going to find me.
Those are 2 good places to be for sure. Hey, so if you were not doing this, working for Own It and running this company, kind of coaching in your own big broad way, what do you think you might be doing as a profession right now?
Nothing. I would be lost. And I say that because I just feel like it comes right back to what your purpose is. There's a multitude of things that you could be doing, but what is it that you're meant to be doing? And I feel like I'm really meant to be exactly where I am. And if my answer was any different, as soon as we hung up here, then I would have a career change that we'd have to address. How do we get there?
Well, I'm glad that's not the case. Hey, so if you're setting up an ideal training day for yourself, what's playing on the radio and what is your best hands down go-to meal after?
So I actually don't listen to music when I train. It's podcasts, or I will listen to Rich Wilkerson or TD Jakes. Those are 2 of my favorite pastors. And so I'll listen to their sermons and just kind of let it sink in through osmosis. But yeah, that's what I'm going to be listening to. And then the post meal is always chicken, not in the same thing. So chicken separate, but then a protein shake.
Yeah, the distinction that it's separate is
I was going to say
important.
chicken and a protein shake. It's not a chicken protein shake. It's chicken and a protein shake.
Okay. All right. Last one I got for you for overtime. What is the most valuable piece of advice you've received? And if you want to share, from who?
So I think it comes back to talent gets you noticed, but consistency gets you paid. And it was my dad. And when I was 12, it really just shaped a huge mindset change for me. It's all about this level of consistency. And if we can tap into that level of consistency, we can change the way in which we roll. And if we reverse engineer that, it's getting super competent in whatever it is that we need to understand, that yields confidence, which ultimately breeds consistency.
Awesome. Hey, well, Justin, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. I know you're very busy. You got a lot of stuff going on with the business, your life, your training, and everything. For anybody that has any questions or follow up, that wants to kind of get a little bit more information on Own It and everything you guys have to offer, where can they kind of get a hold of you or reach out to see some more information?
Yeah, I'm super active on social media. So at Justin Roth, Justin Roeth, are all my social handles on all the given platforms. And then just ownitcoaching.com.
Awesome. Hey, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. Like I said, it's awesome to see someone that lives and breathes, found a purpose. I think the company is awesome. I think what you guys are doing is great. And it's really cool to get you on and hear more from your personal side of the story and see kind of how that has been put into the Own It system. So thank you again for coming on today, man.
Absolutely, Nick. I appreciate you.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.